Micah started a new series a few weeks ago by asking, what do you really, really want? And he basically answered the question that he asked and said, well, one thing that we all want our own way. And 3 points that he made in the first sermon to launch this series, we took a little break on Mother's Day, but getting back into it today. 3 points he made in the first sermon. Number one, if we always get our way, eventually, ultimately, we're going to lose our way. And if we always do what we want to do, we end up where we don't want to be. And then the third point he made is if we get what we want now, we may not get what we really ultimately want or need later. Now, all of us have determined our own future, undermined our own hopes and dreams, because we wouldn't stop until we got what we wanted. And now we wish we could go back and turn the clock back a bit, because what we got kept us from getting where we realize now we ultimately needed to be. We got what we want. We didn't get where we ultimately needed to be. And Micah's example was girls in high school. I always hold my breath when Micah starts preaching, wondering if I got to come back and apologize for something that he said. But he made a good point. He quoted the great theologian Garth Brooks. Thank heavens for unanswered prayer or something like that. I don't know. But now the whole purpose of this series is to help you figure out what you really, really want. But what you really want can only be defined once you understand what your values are, okay? So let's be real honest about this today. Our culture, all of our media outlets, most of our relationships, all of that stuff does very little to focus our attention on our values. Advertisers do not market to your values. They market to your desires. How many of you know that? They market to your desires. They're always going to do that because they figured out a long time ago that our desires are fed by our eyes. If we can see it, then we're going to desire it, we're going to want it, and so they try to make visuals as strong and powerful as they possibly can. But values are determined by the heart, the core of who you are. At the heart of the matter is the matter of the heart. It's who you're supposed to be, the values of your heart. And I'm here to show you how to get your values to navigate your life instead of your desires, determining your steps and making all your decisions. And let's dive deeper and get some clarity on this issue, because I want you to determine your life by your values, not desires. That's the most important thing that I want you to walk away from and with today. Because your values ultimately should influence your desires and your wants. Are you with me so far? Now, when you know what your values are, then you can figure out what you want, but not until. That's what a value is. A value, once defined, is the things that are the most important in your life, right? Now, once you define your values, you can determine life goals. You can kind of set visions and strategies for life. Your values are important because they influence every step, every decision that you make. That they're going to cause you to feel good about your choices or set off an alarm when you make decisions that stomp on your values. Now, what kind of person do you want to be? You got to answer that question. What kind of person do you want to be? What about your character? What about your integrity? What about a legacy? If you're a high school student, and I've met a lot of students today and talked to quite a few that are graduating this year, did you know that when you graduate from high school, they're either going to have good things to say about you, bad things to say about you, or nothing to say about you? What's your high school legacy going to be? College students in the room, after you graduate, they're going to say good things, bad things, or no things about you. What do you want your legacy to be? Parents who still have children living at home, what will they say about your home once that they're gone? What's the legacy of your home life going to be in their hearts? Well, when you leave your current job because you've been offered a better one, what are they going to say about you where you are after you're gone? Good things, bad things, or no things. That is what we call legacy. Now, these are the kind of deeper issues, the value questions that should drive us past our surface of desires and wants. We're talking about how to get what you really want, but you first have to define the most important things in your life, your values. Why is that? Because we will never get what we really want until we discover what we really value. Amen? Here's what I know. If a nice person like me doesn't come along and help you define and focus your attention on what you really, really value, you probably will never slow down long enough to discover what your values actually are. So we're taking time to do that today. Are you awake out there? Y'all still with me? Nod your head like a duck eating corn every now and then so I'll know you're with me. There you go. There are a lot of people every weekend, this is true, that, they come here to Cross Point and they're not Christians. And we think that's pretty awesome because we created this church with you in mind. But listen, regardless of what you think about God or Jesus or Christianity or the church, what I'm teaching today, the principle that I'm teaching today is true for Christians and people who are not Christians. I mean, it's just true, right? This is not a religious thing. This is just a thing. Are you with me? It's just the way it is. Whether you believe that or not, until you discover what you value, you'll never get what you really ultimately want. Make decisions and choices by values, not desires, and you'll get what you really want whether you're a Christian or not. That's true for everybody in the room. Now, Jesus followers take this one step further, and I'm going to focus on that, but again, there's something in this for everybody today. When you study the words of Jesus, you discover that he consistently focused on values, not desires. So let's clarify the next step for Jesus followers today. We believe we'll never get what we really want until we discover what we really value, already stated. However, let's take it another step. We believe Jesus has shown us what is most valuable in this life. We believe he's done that. We believe Jesus has pointed the way to the kind of values that Jesus followers ought to embrace. Can I get a witness? Now, the problem is choosing valuable is unnatural. It's unnatural. Not because you lack discipline or information. This runs much deeper than that because there's an internal conflict between what comes natural and what we really value. Now, the Apostle Paul described this internal conflict better than anyone else possibly ever could, and Paul wrote over half the New Testament. So, at one time, he absolutely he detested Christians. He was a good, law-abiding Jewish man who tried to put the church out of business in the first century, but then he had this big conversion on the Damascus Highway, this big God encounter, and it changed his life so immediately that he became an all-out Jesus follower. So one day he writes a letter to a group of Christians living in Rome, and in this letter he describes the conflict that everybody in the room wrestles with. And he puts it in terms that we can all understand. Now, my life verse is Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15, that says, "Speak the truth in love." If you don't have a life verse, what Paul says next could become yours, because life verses should relate to some aspect of who you are. And I think this verse that Paul shares relates to everybody in the room. You guys ready for this? You could make this your life verse if you don't have one. Here's what the Apostle Paul says. Here's your life verse. I do not understand what I do. That's it. Go ahead and have that tattooed on your chest or make it your tramp stamp or whatever you want to do with that. So that when you stand up in front of the mirror every morning, you're reminded, I do not understand what I do. A more modern translation of this might be, man, I don't understand why I do some of the dumb things I do. I don't understand why I do some of the dumb things I do, right? If you don't believe the Bible is true, this right here will cause you to second guess your belief because you're going, when you hear this, you go, wow, that's true for everybody. That's true. Maybe there is some truth in the Bible after all, because every single one of us could stand up in the room and tell a story, right? We could all tell a story. We often look in the mirror and say to ourselves, you idiot, why did you do that? I do not understand the dumb things I do. Anybody else besides me? I think that's true. Think about that. What is wrong with us? What is wrong with us? This is the point of today's message, and really the sermon next Sunday as well. There is a conflict between what you value and your human nature, and it's a big, big, big deal, okay? More information, more discipline is not going to fix this problem. It's deeper than that, and here Paul says, I do not understand the things I do. I don't understand it. He continues, for what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, that's the stuff I end up doing. That's what I do. Paul is saying there's something I really want, but I keep choosing something else, and I end up hating that choice, and as a result, I end up hating myself because of it. Now, I ask you to be honest with yourself for a moment here, because some of you in this room right now have at some point in your life hated yourself because you continued to do things that you did not want to do, but you couldn't stop. You just felt like, man, I don't get it. I want to do better, but how do I stop doing the wrong thing so that I can start doing the right thing? And you would like to blame your mama, and you'd like to blame your boss, and you'd like to blame the world, but right now you just are honest with yourself, and you hate that about yourself. Paul says, hey, I understand because I can't do the things I want to do, but I have no trouble doing the things I hate doing, which makes me hate the man in the mirror. He said, I'm just weak when it comes to making the right decision. Can anybody identify with this? Absolutely. I have no idea why I continue to do the dumb things I do. I just don't like myself very much. He goes on and he says, and if I do what I do not want to do, and then he throws something weird in there if you don't know the backdrop for this. He said, I agree that the law is good. What? All that mind-bending stuff I was kind of following, but now he says, I agree that the law is good. What's that all about? Paul is referencing the Old Testament Jewish law before he became a Christ follower. He was an educated expert in Jewish law. He knew what the law required. He knew the hundreds of rules and the laws that were out there, the do's and the don'ts. So he says this, and I'm just going to clarify it for you. He said, I tried to keep the law before I started following Jesus. He said, I couldn't do it. Too many rules, too many do's and don'ts, and all that goes with that. He said, it's just too hard. I just couldn't keep up. Now, for us, the old Jewish law is not our issue. We don't even think about the old Jewish law here, right? I mean, it's not an issue for us. It's not something we factor into our daily living. However, our issue is just choosing to do the right thing over the wrong thing every single day, right? I mean, that's our big deal. That's our big issue. And listen, you know right from wrong because when other people do the wrong thing, you're quick to point it out. I can't believe she did that. Right? It's true. You call others out when they do wrong, even though you know the right thing from the wrong thing, and you often do the wrong thing yourself. It's hard to see faults in the mirror. It's a lot easier to see them in people out there, right? I want to do right. I know what it is, but I keep doing the wrong thing. Paul continues. This is going to get real interesting. He said, for I have the desire. In other words, I have the want to. I have the gumption. I have the want to, the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do, I keep doing that. I keep doing bad things when I know I should be doing good things. Now, you can. I'm not going to break all this down and try to make an application to everybody in the room, but you can know what we're talking about here, right? You kind of know where we're unpacking this and making it available to you. Paul should, I think, make everybody in the room feel a little bit better about themselves. Because here's a guy that wrote over half the New Testament. He's a hero of our faith, and he comes out with this, and he's saying something that we can all relate to. Hey, I want to do the right thing, he said, but I often end up doing the wrong thing because there's some kind of crazy internal conflict inside of me that keeps pulling me or dragging me the wrong way. And I don't be able, I don't think I'm able to resist it, he said. I don't know how to stop it. Why is making choices based on values so unnatural for us? I mean, think about that. Because your nature knows nothing of fairness. Stay with me now, this is important. Your nature knows nothing of compassion. People say nature is a beautiful thing. That's true. Nature is a beautiful thing from a distance. From a distance. But not close up. I watched a video this past week of a lion, king of the jungle, being mauled by a group of lionesses. One of the females has got him by the throat. He's on his back, and the others are just peeling his hide back. And he's helpless. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, God, these women. And then I come to myself, and I walked into the living room. I said, baby, I don't think you ought to have to cook tonight. Let me take you out to eat somewhere. You kind of factor in the reality of all that stuff. Nature is dangerous and it's harmful. Have you ever seen some of the videos called When Animals Attack? Anybody ever watch that kind of stuff? I saw some people admiring sea lions, and someone sat down on a concrete wall that sea lions had come into a little harbor where there were sailboats and vessels and all this kind of stuff, and there was a group of sea lions, and people were admiring those, and they were kind of deep down, from the sea wall, and there was a little short, maybe 2-foot-high sea wall, and somebody went over and sat on it so they could get a selfie of them with the sea lions in the backdrop. As soon as she sat down, a sea lion springs up out of the water, grabs her by the nape of the neck, and pulls her into the ocean. Again, I want to tell you, nature is beautiful from a distance. From a distance. Up close, it can be harmful and it can be dangerous. There's no forgiveness in nature, no generosity, no compassion, no grace in nature. And listen, that's not just true of the animal kingdom. That's true of human nature as well. If human beings do what comes naturally, it's not going to be pretty. It just isn't. You want to see what human nature looks like? Human nature is cheating, lying, racism, adultery, me first, revenge, and I could go on. And I listed 3 twice. I don't know why I did that, but there's others, a whole bunch of them. Maybe those are the important ones for you to think about today. Lying, racism, and adultery. This is the kind of stuff that comes out of doing what comes naturally. Paul wrote another letter to some Christians in the province of Galatia, and he said this: when you follow the desires of your sinful nature, he labels it, your sinful nature, the results are very clear. When you follow the desires of your sinful nature, the results are very clear. Now, Christians believe, because the New Testament teaches and Jesus talks about it, and the Apostle Paul elaborated on it, that our nature, our human nature is broken, that there's something wrong with you, there's something wrong with me, that this isn't just information and it's not just discipline, there's something fundamentally broken on the inside of us. And I know that there is a big pushback from our culture and a huge resistance to this very thing because, it's politically incorrect to tell people, I'm sorry, but the New Testament and Paul and Jesus all teach us that we're broken on the inside. There's an internal conflict, and we need to lean into faith and believe in Jesus to get that fixed, right? So people don't like to hear that. They don't want to. And when somebody tells you that, hey, don't say stuff like that, it's not the right thing to say, just stop and ask them, do you ever do the wrong thing even though you know what the right thing to do actually is? Because every person that's honest is going to have to say yes. I know the right thing, but doggone it, if I don't do the wrong thing, that means something is broken on the inside of you. You're not able to carry it out like you're supposed to. And the reason people do the wrong thing is because something is fundamentally broken. So Paul comes right out and he calls it our sinful human nature, but he could just as easily have called it what I've called this sermon title today, broken human nature. When you follow the desires of your sinful nature, he said the results are clear, and then he's going to tell us what the results are. He said sexual immorality, impurity, lustful pleasures, and then 2 words we don't talk about very often, idolatry and sorcery. Do you know what idolatry is? Idolatry is basically putting things before people. In other words, when your 16-year-old daughter calls home and says that she just wrecked your brand new car, and your first response is, how bad you messed the car up? Instead of, baby, are you okay? That's valuing stuff over people. Now, you're going to rationalize that and tell me all day long how wrong I am, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to be right and you're going to be wrong. That's idolatry, okay? Sorcery, in simple terms, is trying to control people. That's what sorcerers do. In other words, I'm going to do this so that I can control or manipulate your behavior. He goes on and he lists some more things. He said hostility, quarreling, and jealousy. And you'd say, oh, no, PT, I don't have a problem with jealousy. I'm just not a jealous person. But on the inside, you get to your 10-year or 20-year or 30-year class reunion, and maybe you weren't in the in crowd or whatever, and you see the prom king and the prom queen, and he was the star running back, and he got all the pretty girls, and all of a sudden you see him, and he's about 60, 70 pounds heavier than what he was in high school. If on the inside you kind of give yourself a little high five and go, yes, That's an ugly, ugly thing, isn't it? And then all of a sudden you come out of that and you go, wow, where did that come from? I don't feel that way. Why is that? Why is it that, what is that? Where did it come from? That's ugly. New Testament writers would say that's sin. And the reason that that happens is because of your broken human nature. He goes on, he says, outbursts of anger, if you've got a temper, selfish ambition, just got to have your way, always have to be right, dissension, division, envy, drunkenness, wild parties, and other sins like these. Now, come on, everybody in the room can look at this list and find things that are true about ourselves. But we'd be quick to say, that's not who I want to be. It's true about me, and I hate that about myself. I don't want to be that person. I don't know why I do some of the stupid things I do, but I do know that it's destroying my family. It's having a negative impact on my finances, my career, and my prospects for a brighter future. This isn't just, hey, here's a sermon. Here's some discipline that you need to get, some disciplines you need to set up in your life. Here's some more information to help you to go out and fix this. No matter what you know and how disciplined you are, this is a daily battle for everybody in the room, okay? But, and this is a big but, y'all, I came to tell you, this is a battle that you can win. This is a battle you can win, right? You agree with me, or are you still hung on the big but? You still hung up on the big but? I understand. I came to tell you this is a battle that you can win. There is a way to embrace your values, and for most of us in the room, your Christian values over what would come naturally that's ugly and unforgiving. There's a way to get what you really and truly want, what you were created for, what you were designed for, a way to choose the good over the bad, the right over the wrong. Amen. Now, let's finish this sermon by looking at some stuff that James, the brother of Jesus, said that's going to help everybody in the room today. Believers, unbelievers, doesn't matter. This is so powerful. And I'm just going to read it as the way he wrote it. He said, but each person is tempted when they are dragged away. Now imagine being dragged away. In fact, I'm going to ask everybody in the room to close your eyes, and I'm going to read the scripture again, and I want you to repeat it in sections after me. And I want you to imagine you're standing in a huddle of people, and you're interacting with them, and you're really into the conversation and the dialogue, and you're participating. But when I get to where we're dragged away, I want you to imagine being pulled out of that circle in that conversation by force, and you're just hauled off. You were into it, now you're just pulled away, right? So let's read it together with your eyes closed. I want you to repeat it after me. Here we go. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away. Now somebody pulls you out of that circle, and there you go. That's a very, very visual thing that we skip right over many times. This is a picture of somebody that's trying to do the right thing, engage the right way, respond the right way, develop a good habit, and embrace the right values. They're trying to embrace what is really, really important, what they really want, but something comes along and drags them away. That's the battle. That's where we all live. That's the struggle. That's valuable versus natural. They're dragged away by their own evil desires and enticed. That is, they knew what they wanted, but they got dragged away. I was headed in the right direction, but then I saw her. And I let her drag me away. I saw him, and I let him drag me away. I knew what I was supposed to do. I'd already made up my mind what the right thing was, but then another opportunity presented itself, and it dragged me away. He continues, then after desire grows and conceives, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. In other words, sin ultimately kills stuff. It kills stuff. Sin ultimately undermines the future. Sin ultimately undermines the way that we see ourselves, and we come to the place where we say, you know what, I do not know why I do the dumb things that I do. I don't know why. I want to do the right thing, but I keep doing the dumb thing, and I can't seem to stop. And then James ends where I want to end today. He ends by saying this, don't be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. You know why he says that? Because he knows how easily we are deceived. He knows how easily we surrender our values to our wants and our desires. He said, don't be deceived. Hang tough, hang strong. He knows how easily distracted we are with what we want, and we allow our desires to stomp all over our values. it's like he's grabbing each of us by the collar and he's saying, don't be deceived. Come on, come on. Don't be deceived. Don't give in to human nature and give up your values. He's saying middle and high school students, don't be deceived. College students, don't be deceived. Fraternity, sorority members, don't be deceived. Newlyweds, don't be deceived. Men and women who are traveling and are away from your family and your spouse, don't be deceived. Couples struggling in your marriage, your eyes are starting to wander. Your values are at home with your wife and kids, but your desires are starting to drag you away. Don't trade your values for what comes naturally, because what comes naturally is very dangerous and very unforgiving. He says, don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. We have a growing church, and it's really exciting. And for what you see, it's a little bit humorous. People that visit us for the first time, during the offering or something, not a lot of people come up to give. And one of our friends visited here. I don't even remember. Don't tell me who it was. But it'll come to me. But they come and they said, hey, when you invited people to come give, hardly anybody did. How are y'all surviving? And I said, well, the thing is, about 80% of our church gives online. It's called modern technology. And we have about 500 people a week that when they can't be here, look, to be honest with you, if everybody came to 3 services that calls Crosspoint their home church, we couldn't get them all in the building. I had a young mother come in to after second service into the VIP room, and she said, hey, this is my second Sunday, and she was so sweet. She said, y'all got a problem. I said, what is it? She said, there's no room in children's ministry for children. And she said, not true, right? She's like, have y'all thought about doing something about that? And I said, you're right, you've only been here for 2 weeks, haven't you? Because we're doing everything that we can. We've got this big capital campaign, and we're trying to make room. And I said, eventually, student ministry and children's ministry is getting everything you see. We're going to convert this, and there's going to be room right now. We're just trying to manage the chaos, right? We're just trying to manage the chaos. So here's the thing. There's a lot more people, even when you have a little bit of elbow room, there's a lot more people that come to this church than what you're seeing here every week. And we have a growing church, and it's really, really exciting. And sometimes I'm given the opportunity to get to know a lot of people better than just, shaking a hand at church on Sundays. You invite me to things. Maybe I do a wedding for you, or regrettably, sometimes we do funerals. And I'm getting to know a lot of people outside of Sunday morning environments at Crosspoint. And every time I get to rub elbows with them, I get to listen to their dreams or what they're going to major in when they get to college, or I sit in the audience when they're doing promotion ceremonies out at Fort Bragg or whatever that it is. It's very exciting to me to get to know people and connect to their life and go, wow, this is incredible. I'm blown away by the potential in the lives of all these Jesus followers. And I often think to myself, what an incredible group of people that assembles here every weekend, and what an awesome future awaits these amazing adults and students and children. And as your pastor, I celebrate that. Man, I'm excited for you. And I want the very best for you in all of that. But I got to say, sometimes in our staff meetings, when our pastors and staff come together during the week for to talk about church issues and to try to fix things that are broken, I hear some stories, and it breaks my heart more than, man, I don't even know. I heard one recently that just shattered my soul, and I didn't know how to respond to that, and I just sat in silence as the guys was kind of kicking it around, and how do we help this family? But here's the fact. When I hear about cross-pointers, men, women, college students, high school and middle school students and children that make poor choices and horrible decisions that undermine their own future, that shatters my soul. Honestly, it does. I hear those stories, and I'll say, who was that again? And they'll tell me, and I'll say, I know them. I just had a conversation with them. That decision, if they did that violated their values. That's not who they are. That's not who they want to be. That doesn't represent what's in their heart. I know enough, and that breaks my heart. And let me say this, because there's enough bad stuff all around us that you have no control over. There's so much already that makes it very difficult for people to have successful marriages that you have no control over. very difficult for you to graduate and accomplish and achieve the education that you want because you have no control over some of those issues. There's plenty of things in life that we have no control over. So why in the world will we undermine our own future by opting for what comes natural over what's the most important thing, which should be your values, and as believers, your Christian values? And when I see people do that, I'm just depleted by it. And I need to say, and look, I'm not going to prop the things I'm fixing to say. I'm not going to prop it up with Scripture today, but I'm going to unpack it next Sunday. I'm just going to make some broad statements here that I believe with my whole heart, mind, and soul. Here's what I believe. Whether you're a Christian or not, following Jesus will make your life better. And it'll make you better at life. Because Jesus will guide you and help you live your values and rise above your broken human nature. And the other thing that just makes my heart race is trying to reach people who are far from God. Maybe someone who walked away from the church because of a bad church experience and they turned their backs on Christianity. I love proving to that demographic of people that Christianity is not some kind of stuck-in-the-mud buzzkill, dragging people down a road of degradation, getting them further and further away from a hopeless end. Christianity is God the Father stepping into human history to point us to something beyond our own misguided inclinations. Christianity is the best of the best things. I believe it with my whole heart. And yes, we believe in heaven, and yes, we believe in eternity, but beyond all of that, following Jesus will make your life better. It'll make your life better. And to make sure that I'm not being misunderstood, listen, here's the truth. Every single day, I too have to resist being dragged away. We all have that temptation. But it's worth the price you pay to live your life out of your values instead of defaulting to your wants and your desires. So here's the deal. Before next Sunday, I'd like for you to answer 3 questions. Ask yourself and answer 3 questions. Here's what I want you to do. If you're scrambling to try to write these down, just get your smartphone out, and after all 3 of the questions are put up on the screen, they're going to leave it up for just a moment so you can take a picture of the screen, and that way you won't forget the questions just like they're given. But I want you to ask and answer these 3 questions. The first one you probably could already guess, but here it is. What do you really want? What do you really want? The second one, what keeps dragging you away from that? What desire, what temptation keeps dragging you away from what you really want? Now, I'm not asking you to come clean with your parents or your wife or your husband because I know you're not going to do that. Okay? What keeps dragging you away from what you really want is a question that you need to be honest with yourself about this week. Okay? You need to be honest. And then number 3, how long do you plan to let your wants and desires stomp all over your values? How long? How long are you going to choose the immediate gratification over the ultimate desire for your life? Another season of life, 5 years, 10 years, how long do you plan to let your desires stomp all over your values? I want you to sit down and answer those questions and then come back next week, and we're going to pick it up from right there. Now, let me say this, and I rarely set up the next week the way I'm fixing to set this one up. I know you guys, okay? Next week is Memorial Day weekend. A lot of you's not coming back. I get it, I understand. But here's what I'm going to ask you to do. It's one of the lowest attended Sundays of the year for us. The good news is we grow during the summer. It's an incredible thing that happened last year. I expect that'll happen again. But here's what I'm asking you to do because it's so important. What I'm going to present to you next week is going to answer this big question. Listen to me now, very important. This is going to blow your mind because you don't have to continue to be angry or hurt or disappointed at yourself for wanting to do the right thing but always doing the wrong thing. I'm going to show you how to practically fix that based on a biblical principle that's going to blow your mind. Don't you want to quit doing the wrong thing when you know what the right thing to do is? Now, it's not always going to be the case. There's going to be times that you know you should not have the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. You know that it should be a salad and baked chicken, grilled, whatever. You can apply this principle any way you want. But I'm going to show you how to put in place some powerful biblical principles that will help you, for the most part, in the big issues of life, do the right thing most of the time instead of the wrong thing. And ultimately, as you get better and better at it, you can make the right choice most every single time. That's worth sitting under an umbrella next Sunday over at Wilmington or wherever you go and getting your phone to get a good connection to the CrossPoint app and tuning in at 8:30, 10 o'clock, or 11:30 and listening to that. And be one of the 500, if you're not here next Sunday, that listens online, okay? Because I want the best for you. I want you to walk out of here knowing that there's some great things coming. So hold on to that in Jesus' name. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes? Father God, I love you. And I thank you for peace that passes all understanding. I do want the best for this church. I love this church and I love the people here. And I pray in Jesus' name that you'll help us, God, to be better than what we are. We keep wants, and even though we know that there's something right that we ought to be doing. And Paul had the struggle. He was honest and transparent about it. And we're not standing here trying to deny or make the world think that we're better than that. We're just like Paul. We give in to wants and desires, and we make bad choices. But God, I believe you have a plan for us to do better than that, to be better people than that. Help us, Father, to grow in our faith, to do the next thing, Lord, that's going to make this powerful principle come alive in our lives. And we'll give you the praise, the honor, and the glory for it in Jesus' precious and holy